Can you feel it? Yeah.
On one end, the main reason I went to South Africa, and specific Polokwane, was for the Nwali Festival to perform. But on the other end, I was also a guest of the Queen of the Venda, Makazi, as she's daily referred to. And she was so magnanimous in how well she welcomed me, in how she was very supportive. She was very motherly in multiple ways. Also, it was my first time sort of traveling in a sort of like a royal entourage. So there was all this protocol, and sometimes my movement was not always my own. But it was just, it was a beautiful experience to go for the festival, but to also be a guest of the Queen and get to experience the culture through her lens, to experience the culture and the people through her lens, but mine as well. And also, the festival was for multiple causes, one of them being gender-based violence, GBV. And one of the sponsors is Red Card, which is a campaign that is against gender-based violence. Now, if you're not familiar, gender-based violence, I think, is an issue all around the world, but it's a very, very big issue in South Africa, especially men visiting violence on their wives. There's been many instances of rape, kidnappings, of just badly beaten. So this festival also meant to highlight and denounce GBV, which is gender-based violence. And so it felt really powerful to be there performing at a festival for the people, a celebration of Nwari, but also that was for a cause, and being able to actively champion against that cause and raise awareness. And it also was very special to be also a guest of the Queen and get to experience her and what she's about, because in this particular case, the Queen of the Venda, she's not just like this queen held on this pedestal, but she's also seen as a mother of the tribe. And being able to see that experience and how she was regarded and how she was warmly received, and even the ceremony around her and the presentation of Nwari, and seeing that she wasn't just somebody who sat on the chair the entire time. She would go down and work with them, make sure things were set, make sure people were fed, make sure everyone was taken care of. And seeing the adoration they had for her, I think, was just really powerful. And it's something that I don't think I'm ever going to forget. And for someone like me who considers myself an artivist, any opportunity to perform for a cause that is dear to my heart, that I hope can be impactful and change the world, really matters. So I really do believe that it was unforgettable. So besides performing at the festival, I attended a banquet as a guest of the Queen. And I remember arriving and I'm sitting in this section for special guests. And I see a kind of a group of maybe 15 women, ranging from the ages of about 10 to, I would say, 25, 28, I'm not sure. And they're very barely clothed. And by barely clothed, I mean, it was about a 1 or 2 piece like outfit where there's a little neck covering and their breasts were out. Now, this is at a banquet, by the way. And other people were fully dressed, formal attire, but these women had their breasts out. So I'm looking like, what is going on here? And then, after a few seconds of this shock, I started to think to myself, okay, I know this is a banquet, but it's a traditional celebration as well. These women are clearly wearing what is a traditional attire. And I had to check myself, because my reaction to them having their breast out was what I like to say is a westernized lens towards nakedness and outfits. So for example, if you're on the beach and you see women wearing the bikini, you're like, oh, they're wearing a bikini, we're on the beach, right? If you're like at a football game and you see some cheerleaders wearing a 2-piece cheer outfit, you're like, oh, we're at the game. This is what cheerleaders wear. It's sort of like this approach of always looking at nakedness through a westernized, in some cases colonized lens, as to where certain outfits and nakedness is permitted, it's allowed, In this particular case, this is a ceremonial attire of the vendor in South Africa. It looks beautiful, it is what it is, and it's a presentation of their culture. And I walked away with even much respect, because the culture was not sanitized, and I put sanitized in quotes here because we use sanitize as a word to mean clean, right? This was not dirty. So the word sanitize does not even fit here. But the point I'm trying to make is that I had to check my bias and my lens, because this westernized lens of looking at where there's certain outfits and nakedness and skin is permitted, versus in this particular case where we were at a banquet and they were wearing their traditional outfit, and it was unapologetic and it was ceremonial, and they were dancing in the ceremony called Xiskobera, right? And it was just beautiful. And then the men came in also in another dance playing a flute with a big drum with a percussion and shuffling and going in circles, and then the women joined them. And in this Xiskobera dance, we eventually joined them, and it was very, very powerful, because it was a ceremony to celebrate God, like the ancestors, Nwari, as he or she is called. And I just felt privileged to be able to be part of that and to check my lens and realize that you can come in and see something, but always think about, is there another way of looking at this? And honestly, it was the most shocking thing, but it was also not so shocking when you put it that way. Funniest. Okay, maybe if it's not even the funniest thing, it's probably the funniest person. I walked away with him as just with friends. This amazing man, he's probably in his 50s. His name is Rendani. Rendani is one of those people that walks into a place and always has a story. He tells you either the story of a culture or the story of the place. He's one of those storytellers. Very passionate storyteller. He sort of lights up the room. And here's the crazy thing about Rendani. Rendani has one of his eyes, I think, is cross-eyed, right? And initially you notice it, but after talking to Rendani for 30 seconds, I swear you stop seeing it because it's almost as if it glows, right? So Rendani is really funny, and I'm going to tell you why. So at the banquet, I was not supposed to perform because, I'm performing at the festival, which is the next day. But they said, Ayo, can you do one song? And I'm like, well, this was not the agreement, but okay, sure, I'll do one song. So I do one of my songs called Americana. And Rendani falls in love with this song. And throughout the trip, he's just like, because this is the chorus. Ife melu, Americana. So Rendani just starts to sing, Ife melu. We'll be randomly in the car. We'll just be like, Ife melu. We'll be walking with a bunch of people. We'll just be like, Americana. And he has a good voice and he sings and he lights up and and then before you know it, throughout the trip, everyone around is just randomly belting into song, Americana. And once Rendani starts, everybody just joins in the chorus. And he has his favorite line. You say, what's the line again? She wanted to get a visa. I mean, that's not the actual line, but that is one of the lines, right? And he was like, what's the line again? She could not get a visa. This is the way he does his hands too, by the way. She could not get a visa. Ife melu. And he starts to dance. And after a while, the song was stuck in everyone's head and it became the song of the trip, which is Americana. And he's like, Ayo, you have to send me that song. I said, Rendani, it's on YouTube and all streaming platforms. He said, but Ayo, WhatsApp it to me. And I remember even arriving, the first person that called me to see if I got in safely was Rendani. Beautiful Rendani, such a great soul. So it was the funniest thing in my entire trip, actually, but not the funniest thing. He was the funniest person. And it was just so good to be around him. And he sort of like, I called him, I said, Rendani, you're like a griot, right? He said, what's a griot? I said, a storyteller, because he always knows the stories. He always knows the origin. He always knows where things started or why people do this or why this goes this way. And we even had an opportunity to talk about colorism and the political, situation in the country and things of that nature. And I'm just always blessed when I'm in a situation to meet someone like Rendani. So yeah, he was... Rendani is the man. He's the man. Shout out Rendani, wherever you are. He's probably going to watch this on WhatsApp. Ayo, I saw your video. I was in the video. So I was told around 8 p.m., Ayo, you're gonna go on at 10, all right? As one of the main performers at this festival. I said, no worries, I'll be ready. So around 9:15, I go meet my dancers. I'm like, hey y'all, let's get ready, get in, game face. So we do a little run through the routine real quick. They change into their outfits. I'm ready to go. I'm backstage at 10. They said, you have to wait. I said, no, you said 10, but no worries. You know how these things go when you perform at festivals. Things don't always go according to time. Plus, there's definitely African time in South Africa. I'm saying Nigerians do African time, but South Africans, they do African time times 3. If they tell you something is at 10, unless you're in a place like Johannesburg in the city, if you're in Polokwane where I was, Polokwane, that's how you pronounce it. In Polokwane, if they tell you something's happening at 2, best believe it's probably gonna be at 5. So I'm supposed to perform at 10, right? So no worries, it's 10:30. I go to the MC, he's like, oh, don't worry, I got you. He puts another person on. Now we're pushing at 11. I'm like, all right, this is 1 hour past when I'm supposed to perform. Now the crazy thing is like, it was frustrating because it was not just about waiting, but my dancers were waiting and we had been waiting and I had not eaten all day. Because also, as a guest of the Queen, I can't eat until the Queen eats. But I'm also one of the performers, one of the main performers. So I'm gonna summon my inner energy, and get through this performance. And then they delay it again. And then they come and get me and say, oh, the food is running out. You should probably eat now. And I'm like, I can't eat right before I perform. So yeah, I am hungry the entire day. I eat a little bit before I can perform so I can be light on my foot. and I'm still starving. And then I get there ready to perform again. And they say, oh, there's this other person that needs to go before me because they've also been waiting. And I'm just like, what is going on here? And my dancers are frustrated and we're just waiting and waiting and waiting. So finally they say, okay, it's your turn. I'm ready to perform. Guess what happens again? They say I have to wait. I just walked away. I said, you know what? Come and get me when it's my time. And I just went quiet. So I think when I went quiet, maybe shook them a little bit because like, oh, he's been talking the entire time. This guy's not quiet. Is everything okay? I said, when I'm ready, when you're ready, let me know. They finally brought me to perform. Now here's the crazy thing. The performance went great and it was amazing. And I had them doing bae. It's okay with the dance. They loved Omi. But I think it was frustrating because even with my dancers and the routine we've been through, practicing, getting ready to go and not eating, waiting, it's sort of at some point it starts to kind of get on you as an artist because I'm going to get on stage and do what I need to do and be ready to go. But there's the emotional time part where you're trying to disconnect from how you're feeling versus what you're supposed to present because you're a professional. But I won't lie, it was frustrating. There was also some sound issues. The DJ kept playing the wrong song each time, so I had to kind of say, oh, DJ, that's the wrong song, and still perform at the same time. So it just felt like there were all these things coming up trying to like frustrate my performance. And I was like, you know what? I came all the way to South Africa for this festival, for this festival. I'm gonna do a great job and I'm gonna need to block that out. And that's one thing I have to say to every artist and creative out there. You have to learn to not let the things that are happening and not going the way they need to go affect your ability to go into a zone and go deep into that space to present your work. Because at the end of the day, you are the presenter of your own work, and it made for a great experience and it made for a great story, but certainly frustrating in the moment. Yes. So back in December, I was in Kenya with my creative director, Mazi, and I said, Mazi, you know, I want to perform in South Africa next year. I just said it. And so when this opportunity came about and they reached out to me to book me for this festival, I had actually forgotten that I said that. And Mazi, she's like, Ayo, you remember you said you wanted to perform in South Africa this year? You manifested that. And I said, wait, you're right. I totally forgotten that I said that. And I have to say that from arriving in Johannesburg and then going to Polokwane, which is where the festival happened, and meeting the people, they were so happy to see us. They were so happy to see me. It was actually me and another artist, Nkumu Katalai. Shout out to Nkumu, by the way, and to Mbaye for putting everything together. Anyway, people were just so happy to see us and to see me. And even the being part of one of the guests of the Queen and attending several functions with her entourage, I became friends with them as well. And they were so welcoming and they were so happy and they were so inquisitive. And you would meet people and have these conversations. And even with my dancers, who I only had one practice with for like 1 quick hour, by the way, and then we performed together, you start to build these bonds. And I always say, what tells you the most about a place is not just the scenery and the culture and the environment. It is the people. The people are the paint that dances and swims on the canvas, because you start to get a sense of what makes this place flow. And honestly, I didn't spend enough time around South Africa and just visiting and meeting people on the streets and all around. I spent more time with the same group of people consistently, being that I was a performer and I was also in the delegation. But it gave these bonds because all these different languages are being spoken. So there will be someone who's Venda and another person who speaks Zulu or Xhosa, and these different languages, but they sort of mix in different ways. And I'm learning different words, which from Danko to Doribua, which is how you say thank you in Venda. And you incorporating all of these things and learning the language in different languages. And it just gave me this unique experience where I wouldn't trade it for the world, but it felt like a glimpse. It felt like a taste. And I want more, to be able to immerse myself more. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about being an artist. When your music takes you to different places and different people hear it and they feel it and they respond to you as an individual, but then they respond to your music. Songs like Americana and the story I was telling, or even Omi. The Queen loved Omi, by the way, she kept singing it. And I put all this to say that at the end of the day, my entire experience was very unique because it wasn't one thing, it was all of the things. But what brought it together ultimately was just the people for me. And when you find that your music is traveling beyond borders and across borders and people are listening to it and hearing it for the first time in some cases, and it's resonating with them, especially the music where you tell stories in, it makes you just understand that this is truly a universal language. So I'm just very pleased that my hard work is paying off, but I'm also very pleased that and humbled that my music is taking me to all these places, and I'm just really, really thankful.